Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto found out about the Uzumaki clan and was a prodigy. A small twist of fate made him aware of his heritage, unsealing the legacies his parents left behind. Graduating from the academy at age 7, he's well on his way. He found a kindred spirit in Uchiha Itachi, and his cousin Shisui's along for the ride. They're on the path to unsealing the legacy left by their ancestors, both the dark and the light. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 18. Unsealing Legacy 18, Fall down 7 times, stand up 8. Someone who lives for others and forgetting to live for himself will not living a fulfilling life. If that's not disrespecting their sacrifice, I don't know what is. Uzumaki Naruto to Hatake Kakashi. Team Ro was one of 48 squads under the Hokage, and one of the best in said special unit. While Naruto knew of existence, he was quite surprised there were 48 squads, which consist of 2 4-man cells. That made up for small percentage of their force, but in Naruto's opinion that was a lot for him, who was part of a division that consists of no more than 50 shinobi and kunoichi. Apparently, like genin teams, even though there were 48 names, after hiragana alphabets, available, just around 20 or so squads were still in rotation. Because of their high-risk missions, it was no wonder the rotation was focused on teams that lost 1 or 2 spots. There was a reason Team 2, who used to be on his guard duty, wasn't reformed with fresh recruits yet. Although in 1 or 2 years his Uchiha teammates assured him that Team 2 would be back on business. Apparently Sandaime was waiting for Shisui and Itachi to gain more experience and planning to place them as captain and vice-captain of new Team 2. They also would be given fresh new recruits as team members. The new Team 2 would be Naruto's their Jinchuriki guards. Go figures, I am not without bodyguards for long. Naruto rolled his eyes. Then again, you two are perhaps why I can get away with it for almost 1 year. Then again, with his constant traveling, the tendency that his mission would never ever be anywhere near Konoha and his penchant for trouble, it was no wonder Sandaime wanted a squad of to follow him around. His recent position as future-in-law of Hinokuni's royal family didn't help either. So Team 2 will be an squad stationed as my guard. How about Team Ro then? He asked his teammates. Team Ro was led by Hatake Kakashi, who was astonishingly young for holding the rank of captain as long as he did. Like any other squads, they answered directly to Hokage, but they also responsible for security detail of Hokage from time to time and were in the front line for the most sensitive missions. Ironically, for an elite unit of Konoha, they were not the most tight-knit group, save for their captain and vice-captain, namely Hatake Kakashi and Tenzo. Why is that? Shisui sighed exasperatedly. Hatake's reputation basically. Hatake Kakashi, their captain, had a bad reputation among as sole survivor of his old team. Their cousin Obito died to save him, and it seemed there was an equally shady circumstance surrounding Yondaime's sole female student's death. Though the rumors in implied that he killed her. Itachi informed him. I don't believe our captain is a comrade killer, our cousin didn't entrust his eye to someone like that. Comrade killer Kakashi. His background as Hatake Asekumo's son didn't help his case. His indifferent attitude to the rumors, if anything, spurred them on. For Itachi's and Shisui's sake, he told them, it was one of the most intense memories from his father. He didn't. I don't recall the details such as the complete circumstances of Nohara Rin's death, but that sadness and despair I saw through my father's eyes is real. Naruto might have no real emotional ties to his father's sole surviving student, but it didn't mean he didn't care for the Hatake at all. At least he still cared of Hatake's whereabout on his father's behalf. Not to mention that boy, he never stopped blaming himself, and he keep living for their sake, to see the future for Obito's sake, protecting his comrades because he couldn't keep that promise. That kind of existence was just so sad. Ma Naruto, it's not like you do not care at all after all. Shisui beamed. Naruto was ticked. Shisui, shut up. The next day, Koichi no Kuni. Why of all places it had to be here? Naruto couldn't help but wonder, and he was sure Itachi and Shisui had the same line of thought. Their clash here with Root was off-putting, but the main reason was, Koichi no Kuni mostly consist of pebbles like its name, but this particular part of this country was rocky grounds like Chuchi no Kuni, a maze-like canyon with steep-sided cliffs. Even though Kakashi couldn't see row members' faces, hidden beneath their mask, he was sure they were all thinking along the same line. Looking for a group of roguenin the whole night here is a pain. This place was too big to look for a group of stealthy shinobi. There were countless potential hiding places here, combing it would take forever. Not to mention. He knelt, touching the moist ground, and looked up at dark night sky that was even darker than usual because of the dark cloud. It's raining season, looking for our targets with my Ninken is out of option. Obviously Tenzu and the rest knew this too. This mission should go to a team with Hyuga if I can complain, but Hokage-sama assigned this to us even though he knew so most likely. So what should we do, Ryukin Taijo? Tenzo asked him. We can do a quick sweep and narrow down their possible hideouts. Kakashi nodded. Well Tora, this environment is not easy even for shinobi to live in long period, we can narrow it accordingly with access to water and the likes, but that would take too long, and skulking around here too much would alert their target of their presence. Sekirei. He called their newest but not permanent addition. What do you think? The Hatake sweat dropped. I took my eyes off of this new kid for a second and he already. Sekirei had a compass out, and crouching down is rubbing the ground thoughtfully. Then again, as Minato-sensei used to say, being a seal master is all about being swift in battlefield. He was focused in his task but apparently not ignoring his surroundings since he heard them. I agree with Ryukin Taijo, but even if we narrow it down that way it can take 2 days and more to cover the whole canyon. Itachi and Shisui were bending down, looking at their friend patting the ground for who knows why. We have been here before. Shisui volunteered. There is a forested area in south with a lake, so that should be a good place to start. Kakashi couldn't help but elated they had cut down the workload for the night by half. Is there any other place like that? There are some, but only in east part, but there is no big water source there as far as we know. It was Itachi who informed them this time, so they had been here as a team. He nodded loftily at them and turned his attention back to Sekirei, who was looking straight ahead as tapping his chin this time. Do you have anything in mind? Sekirei-kun. Too bad because of the mask he couldn't give the seal master a nice smile. His question sounded more like an order without it. Yes, if I may be so bold. I would like to use a seal to track our target down first, and I need assistance from the whole team to do it. He told them seriously. Someone in their team snorted, most likely Kuragi. Well, let's hear what Sekirei have in mind first, then I will decide. He was not that desperate to rely on a rookie right away, besides he didn't want to pressure Sekirei. In answer, Sekirei whipped out a rolled up map and tag. There was a puff of smoke, so it must be storage seal trick. But still. Kakashi narrowed his eye. Where did he put the seal? It looks like a sleight of hand. Cool trick, Sekirei. Kumarai whistled. The newcomer paid Kumarai's comment no mind and unrolled the map, the type made of waterproof paper. So this is what I have in mind. 2 hours later. Tenzu clasped his hand together, and willed water and earth to mix. A pillar of wood sprung from his back, forming a replica of his visage. Mokuton, Moku Bunshin. The Mokuton user quickly pasted the tag on his look-alike. That should do it. He saw a puff of smoke from the corner of his eyes, and turned around. Taijo. You're done, Tenzu. Kakashi raised his hand in salute. Yes, let's return to rendezvous point. They disappeared in blurry forms, moving quicker than eyes could see through the rocky landscape. They slowed down as they were just a mile away from rendezvous point. He is full of surprise, isn't he? The Mokuton user chuckled. Sekirei, I mean, who else? Kakashi shrugged. All seal masters tend to be full of surprise. Sensei and Jiraiya-sama are like that. If I hadn't learned Fuinjutsu myself, I would have thought everything is possible with a brush and ink than kunai and shuriken. Tenzu snorted. It's not as easy as he makes it looks like. While I would like to think I am proficient than most in Fuinjutsu, I am nothing like Sekirei and Minato-sensei, who received formal training in the tower. Yondaime taught him a lot, but his study in Fuinjutsu focused more on modifying and breaking existing seals rather than designing from scratch. An interest he developed after what happened to Rin, that if only he knew Fuinjutsu back then perhaps Rin didn't have to die. Yandai Mesama used to say that Fuinjutsu is all about imagination, a drive to achieve it through trial and error and surviving said trial and error. He smiled at Tenzu, uncaring his Kaoruhei couldn't see it. Tenzu waved his hand in negative. I.e. Kakashi-senpai, you made it sound simple too. He shrugged, Ma, at least I agree with my sensei. Fuinjutsu is an art everyone could learn. There was a number of obstacles to learn from what he knew, like hand coordination and visual problem. It's just the matter whether or not people have enough devotion to go down that path. Though, once you're hooked you will be obsessed over it. He would never forget how Kushina-san almost killed him when he peered her notes over her shoulder. So Tenzu, don't peek at Sekaire's note no matter how curious you are. I don't think he will be held accountable if you get killed. Tenzu gaped, Senpai. Why am I the one you told to be careful? And did he just imply a rookie could kill Tenzu? We're here. Kakashi announced, gesturing towards the masked boy they were talking about just now who was tapping his feet in almost childish fashion while glaring at the map on the ground. Yo, Sekaire-kun, how is it going? Preparation is almost done, we just have to wait for Risu. He reported. Kakashi blinked. He didn't expect Sekaire to know who had not finished when they were miles away from this spot. Only Shisui and Itachi had returned faster than he and Tenzu. Then he noticed the map was nailed to the ground with sacred tree branch he often saw in temple. Each branch had a bell tied to it. You look like you're doing some sort of ritual. Kakashi couldn't help but commented. He shrugged, A seal with a complicated mechanism beyond rank A would be some sort of ritual to work. Kakashi was uncomfortably reminded of Shiki-Fun. Tenzo whistled, this is AS rank seal, A little overkill to track down a group of roguenin, don't you think? Even though their mission was pretty information sensitive. Which was why Umbu was assigned to do it. In the background more and more of their teammates approached from the distance. Sekaire inclined his head slightly at them. Actually this is just border a rank seal, but it's not refined enough to be used with only seal formula yet. Their eyes widened when on the map a line was drawn out of nowhere, it looked like some sort of burn mark. Risu has marked the last point. Sekaire announced. May I begin now Taijo? Or should we wait for the rest of our team? Kakashi nodded, you may begin. We will ask the rest of the team to catch up with us later. Sekaire exhaled softly, well then. He made a ram hand sign. Heidi-ire no Fun, hats yudu. At first it puzzled him why a seal was named Scooping Moon Reflection from seabed, but it started to make sense when above the map suddenly a puddle of water was suspended in the air. This was like Nidaime's Sutton, drawing water from moisture in the air. It was nothing amazing as strong affinity with water enabled shinobi to do the same but not to the extent Nidaime could, and it consumed a large amount of chakra even to call forth a puddle. The water started to spin, thinning above the marked area on the map like a whirlpool. The bell tied to the branch started to chime, and water ripples appeared in tune with the chime. Then the water surface started to be uneven and forming a landscape resembling the canyon. It was a little hard to see clearly because it was all water that made up the miniature landscape. Still not perfect. Sekaire grumbled, hands still locked in ram seal. I find why sensor team we sent didn't find anything though. He almost thought Sekaire failed, but then the young seal master told them he found something. What? A moment please. He switched his hand seal to some sort of modified ram and the water landscape rearranged itself. The Umbu captain guessed Sekaire must had minor water affinity, second affinity perhaps. His eyes narrowed as he saw what the water formed. It had morphed to an upturned cone while the top shaped a water dome and it was rippling continuously. There was a thin sheet of water around the dome, and the water ripple chiming in tune with the bell was cut by the dome. This is a barrier. Sekaire nodded, it's a barrier, and since in spite of the size it's not found yet, I think it's a very old barrier, so it already blended so well with nature energy of surrounding area. I was expecting for my seal to show chakra signature of human, but I found something blocking detection instead. Kumarai, one of his subordinate, hummed. How sure you're that our target is inside this barrier? Well, pretty sure, it's the likeliest location in 20 miles radius. They're on the run so they can't go too far from the only drinkable water source. Sekirei stated confidently. Tokage, another Umbu added. And the conveniently available barrier to hide them. It was Itachi who answered, leftover from War Clan era most likely. Koishi no Kuni is an old battlefield, most likely this group of Roguenin made use of ancient clans' hideout. Sekirei deactivate the seal, and collected the props before vanishing them back to hidden storage seal in his person. To be exact, a Senju clan's hideout most likely. Kakashi could almost hear the disgust on Sekirei's voice. Senju clans. He echoed in shock, how do you know that? Because, the Uzumaki clan is the only seal designer that could design a barrier based on Fuinjutsu that could last this long without proper maintenance. He answered confidently. And the Uzumaki clan didn't give their barrier seals of this caliber to any clan, but their family, the Senju clan. The Hatake's eyes narrowed, Uzumaki this boy is perhaps. Then Shisui added, not to mention. He pointed at one general direction, around 30 miles in that direction is an old Uchiha hideout. No one asked about that one, Uchiha knew their legacy well. Beside it was not much a stretch that Uchiha and Senju never ever lived far apart since the genesis of Shinobi era. Let's move out then. Kakashi decided to not waste time mulling over history. So where is this barrier again? It didn't take long for them to reach the area pinpointed by Sekirei before the Seal Master requested them to stop. Which was what Kakashi had in mind already before the Seal Master spoke first. He knew there was a barrier but Sekirei would like to send a scout to check it first before they infiltrate it. Unfortunately the best candidate would be Sekirei himself but Kakashi didn't like the idea letting a young shinobi on his own without protection. I will accompany you to the barrier, the rest of you should wait. Taijo. I am thinking to send a Kage Bunshin actually. He could make a Kage Bunshin already? This made Kakashi's wild guess more likely to be true. Good idea, but I am still going to send a Kage Bunshin with yours. There is no point if your Kage Bunshin dispelled before it can get anything through to you. Kakashi could almost see amused expression beneath that bird mask before the young shinobi replied, as you wish, Ryukin Taijo. 30 minutes later. My apologies for the long wait, but I get it now. Sekirei announced suddenly just a second after Kakashi got his own memory transfer from the clone. It's a double-layered barrier. Tokage, always the curious one, asked, is that a good news or a bad one? Sekirei shrugged, the good news is this seal is not stopping anyone from entering, all long-lasting seals are like that. Because a barrier that stopped people from physically breaching the border consumed a lot of chakra and conscious maintenance from its user. The bad news are, 1. There is a genjutsu barrier that giving suggestion to anyone approaching its general area to change direction. Then there is a strong detection barrier, so no matter how stealthy we are, our targets will be alerted of intruders. Kakashi nodded, I see. I myself found that it seems our targets aren't using the hideout themselves. They're camping out of the hideout, it seems the hideouts still have traps in them. Hi. Is it possible to dismantle the seal from outside? Tenzu asked curiously. Sekirei shook his head, my apologies but the barrier is based on Fuinjutsu manifested from Shiki, formula, that are located somewhere inside the barrier. Unless we destroy it, or the power source is cut off the barrier will stay up. And I suspect, both options are impossible without entering the barrier. Kakashi guessed. Sekirei nodded, hi. He looked thoughtful as he cupped his chin. I would like to think there is a hole in the defense mechanism somewhere, but it would be akin to trying to not cause a ripple in water surface when jumping to it. Kakashi hummed, so there is no way to catch our targets unaware, and even if there is I don't think it will worth the effort needed to dismantle the barrier. We can perhaps try to flood the old fort. Someone said, and it took a while for Kakashi to compute the extreme suggestion was made by none other than Uchiha Itachi. Kumarai snorted, where did you get the crazy idea? Uchiha Tajima's journal that said the rainy season did a number to Senju clan's fort because it's located in lower ground, so when the river and lake overflows. Itachi trailed off. We have to sabotage the drainage system added after that flood first though. Sekirei added. Which won't be a problem considering it's connected to an underground not far from the fort but outside the barrier. Tenzu raised his hand, which was odd because Kakashi was sure he had never been in academy, but he does act like a student from time to time. How do you guys know so much detail in history? At that, Itachi, Shisui, and Sekirei shared a look with each other. He couldn't see their eyes, but how they turned at each other in unison was telling enough. You wouldn't want to know how meticulous Uchiha and Senju could be with their record in regards to their rival. Seriously, you wouldn't. Considering whatever Uchiha record they read had Senju adding a sewer to their fort written inside, Kakashi didn't doubt them at all. Image of Obito writing furiously on not-so-secret note of his about how he was beaten by Kakashi for the third time that week had nothing to do with it. Obito was just strangely meticulous about some things. That couldn't be a genetic obsession, right? Uchiha and obsession aside, they began to make a plan. First they had to divide their team to 3 groups, one for destroying the pipeline, ambushing the fort and overseeing the whole operation carried out without the slightest mistake. Ambush team would be led by Kakashi himself, and he was going to bring the majority of squad members with him. Sabotage team would consist of Shisui and Itachi. As for the last team, Sabotage team would consist of Itachi and Shisui, and as for tower control, Kakashi contemplated his choice. Obviously, as the only seal master and one that can track our targets in case we chased them out of the barrier, Sekirei would be our control tower, but Kakashi was uneasy to leave the young seal master alone, combat-oriented or not. Toriniko, Sekirei, you guys stay out of the fight and inform us in case we miss anyone. Sekirei inclined his head slightly to Tenzu, who complied immediately. Understood, Taijo. Konoha. I compliment you that at last you see a better use of our Jinchuriki, but I don't think Black Ops is where a weapon of mass destruction belongs, do you? Sometimes Hiruzen couldn't decide who he wanted to kill first, Danzo or Hakure, for being a pain in the ass. While he is a Jinchuriki, he also has a proper name. Please use it, Danzo. While nothing I can say about how you address your soldier, I am not going to let you to call him such thing. And no, I will not leave it to you to find a better use of Naruto-kun. Pity, I can make him great. He is great enough as he is, and I don't see getting you involved with Naruto-kun's life will end well for you or Konoha. The Sandaime pointed out loftily, do not assume I close my eyes to all things you did behind my back, and anything involving Naruto-kun is one of it. Danzo smirked. And I don't approve you trying to assassinate Tokugawa Ieyasu. The Warhawk narrowed his eyes. We should get rid of Tokugawa Ieyasu. His relation with our Jinchuriki is worrying. Contrary to your belief, Tokugawa Ieyasu will never ever seek destruction of Konoha. He is not a short-sighted man who felt threatened by a military body like us. Hiruzen stated with conviction, recalling the young boy who admired Muramasa's devotion to Konoha and Hai no Kuni. We belong to the same country, and quarreling among ourselves is just foolish. Is that why you leave Uchiha clan be? Now he could sense emotion in Danzo's voice. He didn't know since when, but his childhood friend had developed deep loathing for Uchiha clan. Of course Danzo would deny such emotional matter, but even though Danzo approved Uchiha Shisui and Itachi as assets, he saw Uchiha clan as a whole as a threat to their village. He sighed, Danzo. I have think long and hard about us, the village and Uchiha clan. They're a proud clan and we're stomping on their pride with hindering their involvement with the village. Our villagers, civilians, scorn them for doing their job. A job that most often than not forced them to subdue and manhandle civilians, making them feared and hated figures while all they did was keeping order in civilian population. Is it any wonder why they felt dissatisfied and demand us to change our policy with them? You can't be seriously thinking to give an inch to them. The Uchiha clan will demand more than just a little more leeway, and what next? Your hat. Danzo hissed indignantly. The Sandaime shrugged, you talk as if I am going to give them Konoha. Correction, I am willing to hear their demand as long as it's reasonable, and alienating them even further would be detrimental for Konoha because the tower is backing them up. I don't like how they're getting along on the ground of alienation. It will not end well for us. Both of them were Konoha's main inner defense, and if he read Ieyasu's next step right. Those foreigners. They were never foreigners in Konoha, even when Uzushiagakuer was still standing. Hiruzen steeled his voice. I don't like our current situation more than you do, and if compromising with the Uchiha and the tower will save Konoha then so be it. Danzo slammed his fist against Hokage's desk. Sandaime didn't even flinch at the rare display of Danzo's loss of composure. You can't do this. Daime. Put the village above everything, he did what he could for Uchiha clan, the best he could offer. You on the other hand just see them as a threat. Hiruzen shot back. A threat we make in our own home, and I am not sorry if I have to bow my head if that means I am not going through the path of self-fulfilling prophecy. Danzo gritted his teeth. Again Hiruzen, you and your soft-hearted ideal. He inhaled sharply and said. Hiruzen, I hope you will not regret this. But in the end Danzo would make sure Hiruzen regretted it, as once again as the root that supported their village from the shadow he will protect Konoha, even from their own Hokage. Koichi no Kuni. Because of his masked face he couldn't feel the cold and wetness of rain, but when he looked up he could feel the pitter-patter of raindrops against his bone-white mask. The rain is getting heavier. His blue eyes narrowed beneath the porcelain mask. I have a bad feeling somehow, it makes me feel restless. Did something happen in Konoha in their absence? No, he couldn't think like that but focus in this mission first. The pitter-patter had been replaced by heavier noise, not as rhythmical, and with it their vision was getting shorter. Whether this weather was a boon for their side was still up to question. He was not worried so much about this mission, because by standard for Umbu it fall on lower end. Still, their targets chose a smart hiding place. By normal method it would take days to track them down. He was glad his seal could help Team Ro. Sekirei-kun. He inclined his head towards the Mokuton user. Yes? Torin Kofuku Taijo. He turned his attention back to the water replica hovering over the map. So far nothing happened yet, so why was the second in command of Ro team talking to him again? The Umbu opened his mask, just enough for the younger shinobi to see his friendly smile. Sorry you get stuck with me, but please understand that Ryukin Taijo is thinking for the best for each of us. You're doing very well for your first mission in Umbu, in fact better than most newbies, and if he expected some reaction, chuckling was not one of it. I am sorry Fuku Taijo, it's just funny that you think I have problem with being left out of action. Tenzu blushed beneath his mask. Oh, you're not. Then again, if Sekirei was anything like Itachi, Tenzu supposed he wouldn't be too concerned about getting to the good part of mission, namely fighting like most newbies. New recruits in Umbu more often than not revert to their genin mindset, excited for action. At another burst of chuckle he got Tenzu added, sorry, I don't mean to treat you like a kid or anything. He meant it that way though, he just couldn't help it with young recruits like Itachi and Sekirei. He waved his hand in negative. I.e., it's fine Torin Kofuku Taijo. It's pretty refreshing really, that you still see me as a child my age and expect me to sulk like one too. Tenzu quieted down at that. Most people treat you and Itachi-kun like adult, don't they? Sekirei hummed, usually after we open our mouth, after the first hour clients usually think we just look young until they confirm if we're really looks our age. He shrugged. We definitely don't talk and act our age most of the time. And you're fine with that. He recalled how unnerving he was back when he saw himself as nothing but weapon. He was a creepy kid, but he didn't enjoy awkward way adults behaved around him. Sekirei looked at him oddly, at least to Tenzu that bird mask gave off such impression. I guess we're fine with that, after all we're the one who stopped seeing ourselves as a child first. What do you mean? He shrugged, we have different circumstances, Itachi and I. That confirmed Sekirei and Itachi were friends outside of Umbu. But I guess we started off the same, we act mature because that's what expected of our station, and before we know it, that mask become us. They were adult in young body. If asked whether or not we're alright with how people treat us, I guess after a while it hardly matters. Tenzu narrowed his eyes, rather than it hardly matters, more like you don't realize it should matter. They made you forgot you're not an adult. The assault has started. He announced, and Tenzu looked down. The barrier was rippling rapidly before it popped like balloon. The water rearranged itself to a building that reminded Tenzu of their Hokage tower. Oh good, it's a pillar-based barrier after all. With assault team. Boom. Tokage cackled as he set the explosive tag off. Kakashi opened his Sharingan, and he could see the barrier popped off like bubble soap. Sekirei was right that the seal was pillar-based seal, namely there was smaller boundary seal around the fort to stabilize the barrier and distribute energy to maintain it. Now there would be no chance for their targets to track them down with the seal. There were plenty of ways to do so, but on his side he had surprise element. It didn't take long for him to find their targets, just in time for them to emerge out of their camp in full shinobi gear. Che. Konohazumbu. There were around over 20 of them, only a third were shinobis, the rest was just normal mountain bandit. He noted none of these shinobi scratched their headband, so perhaps it was sabotage mission from Kusa? No matter diplomatic shit, this mission would turn up later. They had to eliminate their targets and perhaps catch one or two for TNI. Taijo. Sekirei's voice came from his wireless radio. Did anyone in our team use Kuchi Yasei no Jutsu just now? Kakashi frowned. The only one in team with summoning contract was him. No, we don't. Taijo. Send someone to 2 o'clock, intercept their summon. I think they're trying to send message with it or escaping. So that seal also informed Sekirei of new chakra signature. Kakashi guessed since it appeared out of nowhere he was on the same opinion as Sekirei that most likely it was a summon animal. Got it. Kumarai, I am going to handle the summon myself, round them up as planned. Hi. The bat-masked Umbu saluted before darting to the side to inform the rest of their team to relay his order. Kakashi sped up with chakra boost. Sharingan opened wide when he spotted a Kusa shinobi riding a dragonfly the size of a horse. You're not going anywhere. Kakashi vowed, his hands blurred to a series of hand seals. Raikiri. The lightning chakra crackled, coating his right hand as he sped up with Obito's Sharingan keeping his vision field wide. The Raikiri tore through the summon in one burst of chakra smoke and then through the summoner's stomach. He pulled his bloodied hand and let the Kusanin to bleed out, and went after second Kusanin that tried to escape using the smoke. For the next Kusanin he aimed to capture, but his target had another idea. After Kakashi used ninja wire to trip him and tied him up to nearest pillar, he started to cough violently. Kakashi swore when his prisoner stilled, he was already gone. With Kumarai and Co. going after them to Senju's old fort is a bad idea. Kumarai rolled his eyes. Yes, we're regretting it now. He grumbled to his radio as he and his team dodged another trap they set off. To be fair, we're afraid they're going to use a secret passage to escape. Hitsuji said. But I think Kusanin we're after is not having a better luck than we do to go through these traps unscathed, so obviously that's not the case. If they didn't know the trap, well, obviously they didn't know any secret passage. Tokage nodded in agreement, in the same time dodging Senbon thrown from hole on the wall. If we're lucky, all of them are going to be dead before they get out of here. Their prayer was not answered as at last they managed to catch up with the group of Kusanin. Fighting in narrow hallway was not the best idea, especially if the building and your enemy were trying to kill you. In their defense, they fared better than Kusa group, considering 2 of them were killed by the trap while the only damage they suffered was scratch from close call with Senbon trap. Kumarai zoomed into one nin he guessed was their leader, since he was barking orders just now. A brown-haired guy with bulging eyes, and crescent tattoo around his eyes. Most of his face was covered in face mask like their Taijo, but in white. He was their main target for capture, not to mention so he aimed for knocking the guy out. However, the Kusanin leader was more agile than expected and rolled away from Kumarai's sweeping kick. Kumarai quickly spun his body, grabbing tranquilizer in dart form in one hand and... clack! He blinked when he saw the stone wall revealed to be a revolving hidden door and swept the groggy Kusanin inside before it spun shut. Someone already escaped from that hideout. What just happened? At the announcement Sekirei made through their radio, Team Ro cursed inwardly. How? I am not sure, this Kusanin somehow went off course than the rest of his team. Perhaps he found a secret passage by accident. Sekirei informed them. Kumarai groaned before informing the Seal Master, that's exactly what happened actually. They couldn't help but groan again when not even 5 minutes later and 10 triggered traps later, Tokage got a broken arm. Kumarai embarrassingly twisted his ankle when trying to dodge a trap in awkward position. The worst thing, however, the Kusa team was not as lucky. All of them were dead, either by Team Ro's hand or the trap. Damn it! Back with Kakashi. He was worried about his team, but he believed that they could survive old traps in Senju clan's hideout. His main concern now should be the lucky guy that escaped from Senju's hideout. He managed to spot the Kusunin, but the terrain made it hard to keep the target in sight. The rain was getting heavier, and in this weather the visibility was getting poorer. Sure, his Sharinon was better than normal, but it was not Byakugan. Obito's gift couldn't see through this heavy rain. He contemplated trying his luck with Tranquilizer and threw away that idea when he almost lost his footing because of wind. Damn it, now it would be a match of stamina between this Kusunin and him, considering traveling through this storm was going to consume a lot of chakra. Considering he was never a stamina powerhouse, that was a bad contest and he was not going to try his luck to see if his target had it worse. They reached a lake, and Kakashi noted this was the lake his juniors were talking about before. Deciding to risk it, his hand blurred to a series of seals. Suten, Sugaden no Jutsu. A whirlpool formed and a spiraling torrent shot up after the Kusunin, which he dodged to the side. Kakashi congratulated himself that even though he failed to hit his target with it, he managed to herd him to forested area. If we go there, I don't have to worry as much about wind. And even if he was almost run out of juice. Kakashi reached out for his weapon pouch, not for his weapon but to make a cut with one of his blades. Ninpo, Kuchi Yase no Jutsu. Chakra smoke quickly blown away by the wind, revealing his pack of hound. Go after him. He barked their order. His pack didn't waste their time and run after the Kusunin. The fool made a mistake of looking back once and slowed down. Kakashi had to commend him for regaining his composure with a pack of hound on his heels, and using a bamboo tree as springboard to gain more distance from his pursuer. Too bad for him that Kakashi's hounds was not going to last him any time in this range. Then it dawned on Kakashi to where they were heading to, the clearing they used as rendezvous point. And faster than he liked, they were already on the edge of said clearing. For a moment Kakashi thought it was a good thing because Tenzu and Sekirei were here so they could surround their target. The rain started to slow down, and the wind abated when he saw his two subordinates in the clearing. Kakashi thought the Kusunin was going to change direction at the sight of reinforcement. Instead he ran straight towards Kakashi's teammates. What is that guy doing? Tenzu didn't waste his time to form modified hand seal for Mokyuton. Thick block of wood sprouted to subdue their target but dodged easily. This agile bastard. Tenzu's Mokyuton was versatile but it was very slow, and definitely not ideal for capturing moving target. Kakashi's eyes widened when he saw the Kusunin was running straight towards Sekirei, who just released his seal. It seemed because of Sekirei's small stature, the Kusunin thought he was the weak link of the team. Which was not really wrong considering Sekirei was a specialist and a rookie. Sekirei. Watch out. Damn it. Why Tenzu moved away from Sekirei just now? He should protect the Seal Master. Unexpectedly, instead of heeding Kakashi's warning, Sekirei drew his sword. For one moment Kakashi thought Sekirei was going to fight Hikusunin head-on, but then the Seal Master threw his blade to the air in spinning motion. The blade had odd sheen of steel blue and it reminded Kakashi of Minato-sensei's eye color. In that one moment all eyes were drawn by the incredulity and the beauty of the blade. His trained mind quickly snapped back to attention when he heard a grunt of pain. His eyes were wide in shock when he saw Sekirei digging some sort of staff, which Kakashi belatedly realized as the sheath of the blade on the Kusunin's stomach. Judging from the pathetic gagging and choking noise he made, he ran to the blunt end of the sheath at full speed. Sekirei withdrew the sheath and held the hollow end up. The thrown blade spun down and sheathed itself. Kakashi wondered what the shoei technique was for when Sekirei's grip shifted to the bandaged hilt and whacked the sheathed blade at the Kusunin's head in chopping motion, giving him no chance to retaliate. Wham! The target fell to the wet and muddy ground with a splash, twitching like a dying cockroach with a comical swelling on his head. Brutal. Tenzu couldn't help but commented. Well, a lot of shinobi mistook Seal Master for scholar and incapable of brutality. Which was stupid because they forgot the pioneer of sealing art was a clan that was closely related to the Senju clan, and while they were peace-loving, they were also notorious for their monstrous chakra and creative use of it. If one wanted to argue about Seal Master, they didn't have to look further than Tsunade-sama. She was a medicnin, a Seal Master, and a scholar that was capable of bashing heads in without a sweat. Kakashi sighed, rubbing the back of his head while his ninken stared at the spectacle. I concur that. Pakun added. if you don't need anything else, we will scram now, Kakashi. Without waiting for his permission, Pakun and the rest of his Ninken pack disappeared in a puff of smoke. He didn't blame them really. Sekirei-kun. Kakashi called the seal master who was poking his victim's twitching body with his sheathed blade, which was kind of childish of him. It reminded Kakashi eerily of himself when he was 6, and couldn't resist poking the twitching defeated opponent from second round of Chunin exam with a stick. He is alive. The younger shinobi said, do we want him alive or dead? The twitch of their target was getting wilder. Alive. And the twitch stopped. Sekirei nodded, before he took a tag from his pocket and slapped it on Kusanin's forehead not too gently. The man stilled an instant and began to snore. A seal to knock people out, Tenzu commented. That's really handy, but it's more like he is sleeping. What if he wake up later? He asked, hand clasped to call out a wood to bind their prisoner. Oh, you don't have to worry. Sekirei assured him in a tone that made Tenzu's skin crawl, he will never wake up unless I allow it. Tenzu gulped, air. Their prisoner continued to snore, sleeping peacefully like a baby. Kakashi eyed the Kusanin with his Sharingan, judging from the slow and calm chakra flow he was really sleeping. This man might be weaker than them, but still a Jonin and not a slouch if his agility was anything to go by. It was simply outrageous for this ninja to be able to sleep peacefully while surrounded by enemies. Yo. So we got one guy. That was Shisui. Kakashi was so deep in thought he belatedly realized the rest of their squad was approaching rendezvous point. This guy's is snoring. Shisui unrepentantly poked the sleeping Kusanin with his foot. He didn't even stir when Shisui kicked him hard enough to roll him around. Zzz. Oi. Shishi. Tenzu scolded the younger shinobi. Nah. Shisui shrugged, don't worry, this guy will sleep through animal stampede even. Tenzu blinked beneath his mask, It's Sekirei's Kanashibari no Fyun. The seal of sleep demon. Kanashibari-like. Kanashibari no Jutsu. Tenzu wondered out loud, looking at Sekirei pointedly for explanation. The seal master shook his head. Kanashibari no Jutsu is a ninjutsu that physically restrains an opponent. In the other hand, this seal of mine manipulate target's brainwave, forcing their brain to fall to a deep sleep state. Kakashi's lone eye narrow, he had closed his other eye to save chakra. Such convenient seal. He signaled his subordinate to carry their prisoner. Amazing. Sekirei shook his head, it's only convenient for me, you see, I first developed this seal on request of Konoha's medic division as safer method to induce coma. And you succeed. Yes, but, the cost of chakra activation make this seal impractical in field. So I don't recommend using it unless you have confidence in your chakra reserve. Sekirei finished. Tenzu frowned, how much chakra this seal needs? I heard most seals need little chakra for activation. True. Sekirei nodded, however this is the type of delicate seal usually need balanced chakra input to work, and in this case the chakra needed to activate had to be twice the amount of chakra reserve of intended victim. Kakashi hummed at that, definitely not a seal for me, unless I am trying to shut down a genin or academy student. So it's guaranteed our prisoner won't wake up before we arrive in Konoha? He asked. No, he won't. Sekirei answered with conviction. Is there any time limit? Kakashi asked. Sekirei nodded, not in theory, but I have been told by medic that for patient that didn't need it, it's not recommended to let them sleep longer than 2 days. And the risk is slipping to coma, I suppose, and it will require medic nin to wake them up. Sekirei informed them. Definitely an overkill no matter how safe it made transporting a prisoner be. Alright, but Sekirei-kun, would you mind to tell me why you throw your blade like that and used the sheath to attack? Kakashi asked the nagging question he couldn't help but curious about. Sekirei nonchalantly answered, it was a distraction, Jonin, or not. I learned that something shiny is eye-catching, and a distracted shinobi is a dead shinobi. He threw his weapon away for distraction. Kakashi admitted even him was distracted by the gleaming blade and the incredulity of throwing one's weapon when an enemy was running towards you. Still, this rookie had a lot of guts to pull it off. The next day, Hokage's office. Kakashi had foreseen this, in which Hokage would ask about how they fared with incorporating a seal master in their team. He guessed this was another program like when Tsunade-sama proposed program of field medic nin, to increase efficiency of team dynamic. However, he didn't expect Hokage-sama to ask about Sekaire's performance in particular, it as if Sandaime was more interested in the young seal master than the result of his induction to their team. Well, Kakashi began, he reminded me a little when we get Itachi for the first time. Before Hokage decided Itachi would be better off in Team 2, until the demise that befall the team made him pass the Uchiha back. A newbie who quickly adapted to his place in Umbu, his first performance in mission is flawless, he knew what expected of his specialization in the team, good in following orders, and very creative. Hokage frowned, reminded you of Itachi-kun. Somehow Kakashi had a feeling that was not what Sandaime expected. Ah yes, in the way they fit seamlessly to their new role, an eagerness to work well in team. Though, I suppose Sekaire is livelier than Itachi-kun, as calm but not as subdued. Kumarai made fun of his specialization, nothing heated or offensive, and Sekaire gave him a witty retort that made everyone laugh. Sandaime smiled at him, the Hokage seemed pleased by his comment. So, do you like the new addition on your team? I suppose. Kakashi was not sure how to respond to that. I do, I think that if we're in need of an expert in sealing we would love to have him again. The Hokage nodded sagely, I am glad to hear that though, if you want him, make sure to make Sekaire feel welcome in your team, he is on high demand after all. Kakashi nodded, as he was not sure how to respond to that either. So he left the Hokage's office with more puzzle than when he came. Who was Sekaire really? And why Hokage was so interested in him? Konoha Shinobi Cemetery. Unlike civilian cemetery where citizens of the Konoha were buried, one reserved for shinobi was located at its outskirts. He knew the cemetery since his academy day, that the place existed, but he was always left out from cemetery maintenance duty. His instructors didn't believe he wouldn't make trouble, but Naruto was sure Sandaime didn't want him to look for grave with specific name. Uzumaki Kushina. Uzumaki Mito. Namikaze Minato. It was not hard to find grave belonged to Hokage and their wives, they even located in completely different plot of land not far from other graves. I don't mind you guys going home first, you know. He told them as he balanced the bouquet of flower in his arms. Shisui, who was still in Umbu gear as the rest of their team, pulled a face, absolutely not, we're going to accompany you even all the way to hell. He declared in dramatic fashion. Naruto was not impressed, I appreciate the sentiment, but we're just visiting my parents' grave, not hell. Although, I don't want you guys to get in trouble if someone see us. Because their anal retentive Hokage was still keeping his pedigree as a secret. While Naruto appreciates Sandaime's vigilance for his safety, he didn't see the point of keeping it from him to this extent. If anything, it just hurt because Sandaime didn't trust him with his own secret. Though at this point he already passed point of hurt and leaning more to numb. It's fine, Naruto. Itachi assured him. We will just say we want to pay respect before the 10th October when the cemetery will get too crowded. Naruto sighed, if you say so. It was getting late, but it didn't feel right to go straight home, he was not sleepy yet. Kakashi made his way towards the cenotaph located in 3rd Training Ground, the memorial stone was a familiar artifact to him. Kakashi was pretty sure he could memorize every crack, cut, uneven surface of memorial stone by now. Obito's gift was good to memorize detail. He almost stopped dead on his track when he saw that Yamanaka flower shop was still open until this late, and a group of shinobi that just returned from mission was buying flowers. He belatedly realized that today was 9th October, a day before that day. He contemplated for a moment before making his way to the shop. With flowers in hand he made his way towards Konoha Cemetery. While the day was tomorrow, he didn't want to deal with the crowd. He would spend tomorrow at home, and if he felt like it he would visit Memorial Stone instead. When he reached the cemetery he noted the academy students had cleaned the place well, the flower vases were emptied and no wild grass in sight. Silently he complimented the brats for a job well done. He was surprised when he reached Hokage's grave. There was a new flower in front of Shodaime's and Uzumaki Mito's grave. Wow! Kakashi couldn't help but commented. Yamabuki's long string of flowers seemed to overflow from the bamboo vase, contrasting with white petals of Suizan. It was a simply arranged combination, not particularly artful, but there was grace in its simplicity. It was still unusual, as most shinobi, even kunoichi, didn't put much thought in arranging flower for their dead. It seemed pointless, tradition or not. So who? He didn't ponder for long as he sensed presence from somewhere ahead. He was not sure why himself, but on reflex he hit his chakra and presence, creeping silently to presence he sensed ahead. Then he saw them, 3 familiar figures still dressed in umbu gear, paying their respect to Yondaimez and his wife's grave. Sekirei, Itachi, and Shisui. Why? He wondered for a moment, then recalled another grave visited by them belonged to Shodaime and Uzumaki Mito. Oh, as I expected then, that Sekirei is. It seemed they were almost done and waiting for the incense to finish burning. 5 minutes later they started cleaning up the incense and everything they brought as offering. It didn't escape Kakashi's observation they brought ramen with them as food offering. Is that all of it? It was Shisui asking. It was very dark because there was almost no moonlight tonight. Yep. Sekirei answered. Kakashi couldn't see his face from this angle, but that long red hair was distinctive enough. The last figure Kakashi guessed was Itachi tied the trash bag and said, "Shall we go home now? It's almost midnight." Sekirei's body language was thick with hesitation. "I would like to stay for a while until." Itachi and Shisui shared a speaking look before they nodded in understanding. "All right, we get it," Shisui said as he patted Sekire's shoulder comfortingly. "Don't stay too late though," Itachi warned his friend. "You hardly have time for yourself lately, and you're not getting less busy anytime soon, so take care of yourself." "I know, it's fine." They bid him a farewell and Kakashi held his breath when Itachi and Shisui walked past the tree he was hiding behind on. Kakashi would be embarrassed if he noticed their narrowed eyes when they walked past, but he didn't. There was a long silence after the Uchiha cousin left, and Kakashi was snapped back to reality by a soft thud. He craned his neck and saw Sekirei had sat down on the stone pavement in front of Yondaime's grave, legs tucked close to his body as the young shinobi hugged his knees. Then there was soft mumbling he couldn't comprehend. Then there was a sharp intake of breath before something like a mangled, choked sob escaped his lips. "Sekirei." The young seal master whirled around quickly, mask on and hood drawn. Kakashi would be impressed if he didn't stumble. Sekirei didn't fall but managed to catch himself though. "Ha! Ha take Taijo? What are you doing here?" He was almost flailing. It was strange to Kakashi to see the young shinobi who seemed unflappable on mission behaved like this. "Paying my respect like you do, it seems we have the same idea on avoiding crowd of visitors tomorrow." "I see." Sekirei mumbled, hesitation was clear in his body language. Kakashi's eyes went toward the flowers, the only offering Sekirei had not yet taken back with him. Yellow tsubaki looked almost drowned by 2 large and 1 small sunflowers in the center, and the long branched flower that spilled out of the vase was renju. The sunflower was not in uniform color, 1 red, yellow and 1 small orange. The whole combination made the bouquet resembling a sun. If the vase was not built into the altar, Kakashi would be worried it was going to fall down under the weight of all those flowers. It was not an extravagant attempt on ikebana, and while Kakashi was no expert in Hanako Toba, embarrassingly Obito was more adept at this than he ever would be. He could tell they were full of emotion to be conveyed to the dead. Taijo. We're not on mission. Hatake-san then. He snorted at the formal address. Why, you're one formal Uzumaki, aren't you? One Uzumaki I knew before is not as formal and call me with my first name without asking for my permission. Sekirei tensed at that. Of course it's just her friendly nature rather than rudeness. Sekirei swallowed. Is that a guess? That you're an Uzumaki? Kakashi received a nod in response. It is, but I am pretty sure you're an Uzumaki, although I don't recall there is any Uzumaki around Itachi-kun's age the last time, when Kushina-san was still alive. Kakashi blinked. Just now the younger shinobi sounded flabbergasted by something he said. He didn't say anything odd, did he? I mean, you have red hair, very skilled in fuinjutsu for your age, and also your immense stamina. Kakashi listed on. It's pretty telling sign of an Uzumaki, I think. There was a long silence afterward, and Kakashi was about to open his mouth to say something when the young seal master burst to a fit of laughter. Ha 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 ha. This is so, ha ha ha, I can't believe this dash. He covered his mouth before the Uzumaki's verbal tick could slip out. I don't know why you laugh, but I believe that's the unmistakably Uzumaki's verbal tick that almost slipped out from you. Kakashi pointed out almost gleefully. The Uzumaki snorted, fine Hatake-san, you got me there. I am an Uzumaki, but please don't tell Hokage-sama you found me out. Kakashi frowned at that. I don't mean to make you keeping secret from Hokage-sama, but for his peace of mind it would be better if he thinks no one in the village notice existence of an Uzumaki. I am sure you know why we need to keep it under wraps. Kakashi could think up a few, most centering on certain ball of sunshine that also happened to be his sensei's son. Alright, I get it, you owe me though. Because I am sure Hokage-sama would be pretty cross you're easily found out. To be fair, I am not really trying. Of course, after all that vibrant red shoulder-length hair was only covered with hood. Sekirei also didn't keep his large chakra reserve a secret either. After all, my clan is mostly forgotten, and to be frank I am pretty peeved with the academy. Uzushio is not included in history anymore. Kakashi winced inwardly, he knew why it was omitted from their history lesson. Konoha was trying that hard to hide secret, even at the cost of leaving her future generation clueless of her once eternal ally. I am sure you know why. Oh, of course I know why. He didn't sound particularly bitter, just resigned. There is no point looking at the past and regret, you're just going to hold yourself back. Kakashi frowned at that, and yet you're still here, paying your respect for Mito-sama and Kushina-san. Paying respect is different. Sekirei turned to face him fully now, that wagtail mask looked eerie in cloudy night. Is that what confirmed my blood to you? The Hatake's frowned deeper, for the first time Sekirei's voice sounded like he was displeased. Yes. He sighed, gee, I can't even visit my family's grave in peace. No wonder Hokage-sama didn't even let me. Kakashi almost choked at that somber musing. Sekirei, it's fine. I will not tell Hokage-sama, you can keep visiting your family here, you don't have to worry. It was his greatest comfort to be able to talk to his deceased loved ones, he couldn't imagine how it would feel if that was taken away from him. Sekirei stared at him with an odd look, at least his body language had that kind of impression to Kakashi. While I am sure you're misunderstood me somewhere, thank you I guess. The Uzumaki drawled on, hesitating before he broke the stretching silence. May I ask you something? The Hatake blinked before shrugging, go ahead, no promise I will answer you though. It's fine, it's something I don't expect an answer for. He told Kakashi cryptically. Any. Hatake Kakashi, how long do you intend to let their death to weigh you down? Tremor ran through his vein like cold glacier at blunt question Sekirei asked so nonchalantly. They are not weighing me down. He hissed, and he was shocked by how angry he sounded. He wanted to sound assuring but he couldn't help it. Is that so? Perhaps you don't realize you make them be. Before Kakashi could refute that he added, remembering is fine, talking to gravestone if it comfort you is also fine, that's how you cope and so be it. He sounded resigned and Kakashi suddenly felt familiar guilt because the Uzumaki wanted to get something across but Kakashi just couldn't help it. Sekirei turned around, however, dwelling in guilt and questioning yourself on what ifs brings you nothing but pain. Was this boy a mind reader? Even if somehow he found out about Kakashi's past, seeing through him was another matter entirely. He knew there was nothing he could do for Minato-sensei's and Kushina-san's death back then, and Rin chose to die for their village. However, Obito was different problem entirely. Obito died for him. He was selfish, condescending, and far too concerned about following the rules. The set of rules that should chucked out of the window, because what was the point of following rules if you had your comrade's blood in your hands? Had he cared about teamwork and friendship in the same way that Obito did, his kind friend might have survived that mission. Tap. Kakashi's eyes widened when he saw glowing Tomo-shaped blade right in front of his face, tapping his headband. He reacted, backing away with a burst of chakra. What the? Kongo Fusa, the Fuinjutsu, and Hiden that reserved to Uzumaki clan members. Sekaire's was different from Kushina's though, the color was richer gold instead of pale and the blade on the tip reminded Kakashi of Sharingan's Tomo. If I was an enemy you would be dead by now. Sekaire told him mildly. Really? Kakashi. He must be hallucinating because even though the voice was different, the tone and pitch was Minato-sensei's. You should pay attention. Mina dash. Before he could finish another Tomo blade spun menacingly before him. He didn't sense any hostile intent, but he could tell it was some sort of warning. Wasn't he the one who gets dressing down here? Did you get it? Sekaire asked after he retracted his Kongo Fusa. Sure, there was no danger. Sekaire was just dangling the chain on his face, but it was nowhere less unnerving when one had painful memory of dragged around by the same chain back then. He swore he would never made a sexist comment within Kushina's earshots ever again. Another evidence that genius didn't mean wise. Yes, you did. Just, don't wave your Kongo Fusa on my face. Kakashi made shooing motion with his hand irately. I am easily distracted when people brings up my issue. To be fair, this was not a mission and Sekaire was not a hostile enemy. And I heard enough of lecture on they wouldn't want this for me. Sekaire scoffed, good, and I am not going to give you that. Because you know, the dead is dead, and whatever we think about what they want in the end is just our imagination. In the end what you did is what you want for yourself. He pointed out. Kakashi narrowed his lone eye at that. He knew what he was doing. Imitating Obito as some sort of tribute for his fallen friend was not Obito's wish but his alone. In the same time he knew he couldn't be as kind as Obito, who really did help people out of goodness of his heart rather than blatant like Kakashi made out of himself. Kakashi was not ashamed to admit, that was why Obito even in death was always a better person than Kakashi. There is nothing bad about that, is there? Is that what you think? Honestly, it's pretty simple, you let your past to dictate you. Can you honestly say that you have changed at all? If before it was like a solid hit on the gut, this was more like a killing blow. He couldn't deny that because his father's death he became obsessed with following rule out of selfish desire to protect himself. What's so different now if he protect his comrades because of Obito's death? It's not about wrong or right, but do you even like yourselves? Not as a shinobi but as a person. He didn't answer that because if he did it would be a resounding no, and he had spent years hating himself for letting his precious people die. Sekaire went on. Someone who lives for others and forgetting to live for himself will not living a fulfilling life. If that's not disrespecting their sacrifice, I don't know what is. There was nothing Kakashi could say in response to that, but he knew the feelings welling in his heart very well, shame and guilt. Sekaire just sighed, taking his silence as negative. Well, apparently this is a pretty pointless endeavor in my part. He muttered before walking away. Wait. Sekaire. The Uzumaki stopped walking and craned his neck so Kakashi could see the profile of his masked face, a silent query. Why, you're telling me this? At that he rubbed the back of his head, groaning. To tell you the truth, I am not so sure myself. He sounded almost sheepish. But Hatake-san, don't make what I told you tonight change our working relationship. Whatever I said in the end is still others' opinion, you may agree and disagree. Kakashi sweat dropped. Is it just me or this Uzumaki has a drastic change of mood? He sounded almost detached. I don't remember Kushina-san had this moon swing even when she was pregnant. Though I suppose my main reason. I am just passing a message. He told Kakashi. Then it dawned to Kakashi since this talk began not even once Sekaire took credit of what he said as his. There was no opinion or thinking that was his, the way he talked was more like reciting some sort of script. From who? In response Sekaire just inclined his head towards the grave, before he left with a swirl of leaves. On the way back to tower. That's just so mean. Naruto complained, resisting his urge to pout. I can't believe you let him pass. Itachi shrugged, to be fair, we don't have the right to stop him. And it's not like you're not itching to talk to him in private. Shisui added with a grin. Naruto glared at the Uchiha cousins, before sighing. I am not. He grumbled, I am not claiming credits on whatever I told him tonight, I was passing a message. He insisted. I have no right to lecture him and I am not a hypocrite in denial. I am as guilty as he is about getting attached to the dead and past. Naruto, they're your parents and loyal guardians. Shisui pointed out, and yet I don't see you acting like a scarecrow in front of Memorial Stone. It was a pretty ironic take on Kakashi's name, Shisui admitted. For hours, and picking up the dead's bad habit and get it wrong. Naruto stared at annoyed face Shisui made, and noticed Itachi was making his own version of annoyed in which his lips curved down by 2 millimeters and eyes narrowed. Get what right? He's late to everything unless someone's life is on the line or Hokage's order. I get he's trying to copy Obito-san, but Hatake doesn't even actually help old grannies get their cats out of their trees or carry their groceries. Shisui explained with a huff. If he want to honor Obito or something he should at least do the charity part, while Obito is tardy at least his excuse is not lies and it's out of goodness of his heart. Naruto recalled the Uchiha his father was so fond of in his mind, a boy with naturally good heart and optimistic grin. He reminded Naruto of his old self a little, no, a lot. Is that so? And Obito was never that late. Naruto almost couldn't believe Itachi was joining Shisui. Yes, at most he is half an hour late and he is sincerely apologetic about it. Shisui added, recalling one time he had to wait for 2 hours when Hokage requested them to go on mission together. The Hatake had the gall to walk to their meeting point, nose buried in his porn and unrepentantly mumbled about being late without picking his pace. Then he told them he was helping grannies with their grocery, and he got lost in road of life. Shisui was very tempted to correct Kakashi's botched attempt to copy his cousin, but he was not that petty to go for a low blow. Especially when Kakashi looked like he was smacked on the face when he noticed Shisui who was standing apart from the team and practicing suppressing his chakra was part of the team. Still, Shisui was peeved. Naruto sweat dropped. Should I be worried that Shisui and to an extent Itachi have more problem with how not precise Hatake Kakashi at imitating their cousin was rather than the imitating part itself? He had heard that imitation was the highest form of respect, or was it flattery, to one's idol. As a seal master, imitation was the highest form of heresy in his art, so he didn't get it. And he didn't get Hatake either, not more than his father did at any rate, and even his father's understanding should have expired by 9 years. Alright, calm down you two. Not that Itachi need it, I am more concerned of how he would act around me in the next mission I join. It's not like Hatake Taijo is someone who likes to pry. Itachi knew this well, because back when he asked about the transplanted Sharingan it was like walking on eggshells with the Hatake. Even then the Umbu was pretty vague in answering Itachi, and most likely he answered because he thought he owed it to Obito's cousin. He sighed, I hope so. Naruto looked up to cloudy sky. The crescent moon tonight was eerie and reminding him a little of Kurama's pupil. I just want him to hear my father's last thought for him. For Kakashi to start living for himself and free of guilt. Though in the end what Kakashi would do with that advice was still up to him. Naruto's father believed Kakashi could pull it off someday. Naruto was not as optimistic. After all, Hatake Kakashi had done an exemplary job in avoiding that issues for years. Still, his father believed his student could overcome this, and in spite his non-existent faith on Hatake Kakashi, Naruto would like to see if that was true. The ceiling tower. Muramasa, if only that terminal illness didn't get you I would have killed you myself. Hakure murmured to himself as he dusted off documents after documents. It had been weeks and he didn't see even a single useful page in Muramasa's cabinet. Shien's sweat dropped. To-san, there is no point cursing Muramasa-san now, is there? There is. If he continue giving me trouble even beyond the grave. Hakure hissed, browsing through Muramasa's document. Just because Minato-kun don't have Satori, he thinks it would be fine to put the seal to stabilize Satori somewhere here without telling me where is the damn document. That moron, I wonder where did he get that confidence Satori end with him. Can't we just make a new design? I would love to if Muramasa himself didn't take 5 years designing that seal of his. If Muramasa took that long, he didn't even want to imagine how long it would take doing it themselves. Heck, they didn't even comprehend Satori fully. Sure, they knew what it did, but how it worked in someone's head and chakra network? Not a clue. Shien eyed the cabinet reserved for Muramasa alone. Question, why this cabinet is so messy? Obviously Muramasa is not the most orderly person, genius seal master and blacksmith or not. Hakure answered flatly. The younger Shiamatsu cringed, is that so? Now he get where Naruto-sama get his tendency to hand over messy paper for his side project. When did he make the seal? It will be faster if we know. Unlike Naruto-sama, I believe he started to awaken Satoru when he was 18 years old. Hakure rubbed his chin. Satoru is not quite a bloodline in the first place, so it's pretty random. Shion tied his bushy hair up and Hakure held back a laugh because his oldest son looked funny with that hairdo. His son inherited his wife's curly bushy hair, and luckily for his grandsons, Mu and Atla didn't inherit Shion's hair but the more dominant straight hair of their clan. 18. Shion trailed off, unaware of his father's line of thought. Wait a minute, didn't Muramasa-san return to Konoha to settle down when he is almost 30? Yes, so. He didn't recall the exact year himself. Isn't that mean, halfway in developing the seal he is called to capital to be one of the 12 guardians? Shion pointed out. Did he even bring his notes on Satoru's seal back with him? He tried to recall the almost forgotten conversation about the seal they were looking for. As a shinobi and seal master he had a good memory, but it was still hard to call something over 30 years ago. Flashback. Haku. Sage, can you guys help me with this seal? Muramasa asked, tying his hair up in pigtails. His twin, Sangetsu, sweat dropped. Alright, and again, why Sage is my nick? Hakure is herb name, so you guys will have matchy dash. Hakure cut him off. Alright, stop right there, Sangetsu, if you question Muramasa's logic we will be here all day. He was speaking from experience here. Muramasa beamed and their eyes were drawn to his twin pigtails, surprisingly not out of place on him, and even though he was in his late 20s and a man. Your hair. Sangetsu, don't question Muramasa's craziness, just let him be. Why his twin never get a clue to ignore Muramasa's eccentricity. Especially the taste for weird hairstyle he got from his mother, Senju Tuka. Apparently the Senju wanted a daughter, and since Muramasa was pretty enough. Guys? Help me please. He whipped his face towards their direction, blonde twin tails swung following his movement. One of these days Muramasa should feel something when someone was commenting on his hairdo. He quit his job in court because of stress, so he should know how to feel insulted in theory. Alright, where is your note on this seal? This seemed to be one complicated seal. It's not here, so maybe it's still there. Where is there? Capital, of course. You left your seal notes in the capital. I think so. End of flashback. Hakure trembled as realization dawned on him. Muramasa. Shion sighed, To-san, your blood pressure. It's nothing new when it comes to Muramasa-san. Shut up, Shion. Sent someone to capital to get the notes. I can't believe we forgot about that moron's notes for years. That was how a tired Naruto, groggily woken up by a very flustered Hakure, apologized to his master that due to unexpected delay Naruto-sama had to wait for a month patiently in the end. Fortunately his caring master didn't seem to care, and mumbling about idiot student of his father, and it was too early to deal with another problem. So Naruto didn't ask for explanation. He didn't know how to explain to Naruto-sama that his idiotic grandfather left his notes, the lifeblood of a seal master, in capital, and now Homura members and Shion, who got the short end of the stick, were looking for the missing notes with not much success. Muramasa the idiot had left almost everything in his old quarter in Howa Palace and returned to Konoha only carrying 3 swords, some clothes, and money with him, and thought it was a good idea to leave everything else behind. Sorting through Muramasa's junks alone would take days. He had not told Naruto-sama about his not-so-far blood relation to the Uchiha, and he was even more unprepared to explain. Muramasa was a bit touched on the head. Thankfully Naruto-sama didn't ask for explanation even after he was sober. Naruto-sama was thoroughly distracted by his birthday party and ensuing chaos, especially when Kagami's son thought it was a good idea to challenge Takusa to a ridiculous game to make the party merrier. In which the game involved a long clear acrylic pipe, a sealing tool for research. He had no idea whose workshop Shisui stole them from, then an alive squirming cockroach and the most affectionate vine plant from Naruto-sama's garden. Hakure was not sure how the heck Shisui managed to convince Naruto-sama to lend the silver vine Tabi-san to him. And just few days ago Kagami's son spouting nonsense about suing Naruto-sama's plant for sexual harassment and demanded them to stay away from his chastity. The fruit didn't fall far from the tree. Shisui was as dramatic as Kagami. For once Hakure was thankful, so for the sake of greater good he threw Takuza to the wolves, called Uchiha Shisui's creativity to wreak havoc, and watched his student. Takuza's sacrifice would be worth it, blowing a cockroach trapped in clear pipe to go to opposite direction until his face became tomato red, while Tabi-san's vine went shiver under his shirt and tickling both of them. No. Not there. Where are you touching, you pervert? Shisui, you're accusing a plant pervert. They're mutated plants. Ha 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 ha. Naruto-sama, help. Tabi-san is have mercy. And the cockroach? He reminded them helpfully of the main point of the game, blowing the poor menace away from their orifice. Takuza blowed as hard as he could, and Shisui returned it. I will not lose. Why are they still playing this stupid game again? Someone from the crowd wondered. Idiots. Truly. Kagami's son was a genius in creating chaos like his father. And like any true Uzumaki, Naruto-sama couldn't draw his eyes away from unfolding chaos and mayhem. The next day. Takuza. Naruto drawled dangerously, ignoring nagging feeling that he had forgot something, and this was Hakure trying to make him forget. But for the life of him, he didn't think it was anything worth to worry about. Why is that I heard from Hakure, who heard from Yamanaka Dano of all people, that according to his daughter you put half of her class to sleep. This constant headache since the end of his first mission was not helping his mood either. Takuza fidgeted. Yuzuriha looked ashamed. Well, I tried to stop Takuza, young master. Trust me, I tried, but you know Takuza. Once the Shiamatsu boy started on Fuinjutsu, he would rant on and on with technical lingo that no one below first Dan Seal master could comprehend. He also sucked all emotion out from his speech, even though he was talking about the wonder of their art. Once Hakure commented Takuza could put even Danzu's puppet to sleep with his lesson, and as proven by Sai, Danzu's training couldn't help him to stay awake. There was a good reason why Takuza, who was in spite being younger, was as skilled as his sister, but for the life of him he couldn't teach. Naruto himself couldn't comprehend how Takuza made Fuinjutsu sounds boring. Maybe it was his Uzumaki's bias, but it's Fuinjutsu. The art of writing your imagination and made it reality. It was the well of infinite possibility and... Okay, stop right there. I have had enough of you singing praises for the damned Fuinjutsu. Kurama protested from the depth of his mind. I had it when I was inside Mito, your mother, and now you too. That came out wrong. Kurama grumbled, I spend too long inside humans, you guys start to corrupt me with your disgusting way to procreate dash. Kurama, I will stop, but you too, this is getting weird for us both. They agreed, and Naruto turned his attention back to his vassals. At any rate, aside from a few candidates. Which was a ridiculously small pool considering there was almost 100 students getting the same offer. We expect it not going well, but I can't accept it's because they can't stay awake during your lecture. I am really sorry, Naruto-sama. He sighed, I get it why this happened on the first day with third year, Takuza started, and when he finished you're already run out of time. But what happened with second, fourth, and fifth year on the next days? He was busy on mission, so he had no idea, and the mission distracted him enough to make him forget asking. To be fair, no report about it reached his desk. Yuzuriha swallowed. I tried to do damage control, but I was called for emergency mission, so I passed the job over, so Takuza, Iwafune-san and Shion were the ones to go. Naruto would give himself a forehead slap if not for the headache he was already suffering from. Takuza was bad at simplifying explanation, Iwafune could be funny at teaching, but he was prone to digressing and in the end getting nowhere, while Shion, guess from who Takuza got his teaching skill from. You know, there is nothing wrong with assigning anyone with lower rank than second dan, even a student in foundation year. If anything, they could relate to amateur better. Ugh. Their face said, why didn't we think of that? Though the downside would be they might unable to answer everything curious and mischievous students threw at them. Leaning back to the backrest of his chair, he sighed when the chair creaked. By the way, who made the arrangement? It couldn't be Hakure because the old Shiamatsu had been rushed off of his feet for the last few days and holed up in archive room. Actually, whoever volunteered for the job and free. This time Naruto gave in to temptation and palmed his face. He knew it was just a side project that was not a priority, and majority of tower's occupant view it as charity. Still, he wanted the tower to integrate more with Konoha and pulled Uchiha clan along in the process. Itachi and his parents were still skirting around the issue with their clan, because poking the angry beehive Uchiha clan had become was dangerous. In his side, his people was half-hearted and most of the time was just indulging him. In Itachi's and Shisui's side, they were dealing with a ticking time bomb they called their clan. An Iemitsuji I expected result in a year. He inhaled deeply, and told himself to just take one step at a time rather than whining about his problem. Alright, first thing first, see if we can arrange another seminar. And this time. He swallowed. I will go to academy and choose the seal master to bring along myself. If you wanted to get it right, sometimes you can't delegate it to someone else. Shinobi Academy. Instructors' monthly meeting was held today in academy and Iruka was never this impatient waiting for second Tuesday of the month. He had been preparing for this meeting to share his finding with his peers and he pounced at the chance the moment his turn to speak came. He explained his worry about declining quality of education in academy, that at first slowed down to accommodate civilian children after Cubia's attack. Now that they were slowly recovering their number they really had to pick up their pace. One of senior instructor nodded sagely at his argument then pointed out that they had to run it through Hokage first, and even then changing the curriculum back to pre-Third War was too drastic change. Even clan children would have problem to follow, and there was no way they could impose this change to students above third year. That's why I would like to propose a program, in which we're going to give our students a chance for early specialization. Iruka began, so far only sealing division shows their interest in our students, which is a shame since they're not the only understaffed division as far as I know. For example, Medic Nin is especially on high demand all the time, and if we succeed to arrange a cooperative program with Medic division it would be a great boon for Konoha. Even if not all students pass Genin test they still have a chance to be a doctor. It was no secret in Shinobi Village there was never too many medics, especially in Konoha. It could be said that their victory in Second and Third Shinobi War was thanks to their superior medical force. Even in peace period there was never a shortage for medical request, from both shinobi and civilian. So I would like us to try contacting other divisions to hold a seminar like Sealing Division did, and even if we have to open an extra class to make time for it I believe it would be worth it. Iruka finished. They began to discuss it among themselves, hushed whispers and mumbling filled the meeting room. So aside from Sealing Division we will ask Hokage SA-. Iruka shook his head, no, I would like us to request Sealing Division to repeat their seminar. And this time I would like us to brief our students first, to prepare them what this chance mean for their career. He knew in shinobi life, spoon-feeding your student was discouraged but Iruka also knew there was a time to compromise too. Especially if it would benefit their village in the long run. As if answering his prayer a courier ninja sent a letter that informed them that Sealing Division was interested for another seminar, promising a trial run of foundation lesson in sealing art to give their students a taste of their specialization. Did you ask them beforehand? They were puzzled why the letter was marked as emergency 1 though. Iruka shook his head, I didn't. He couldn't believe his luck, he was almost afraid Sealing Division was so disappointed with his students and won't give them another chance. Especially when more than half of his students fell asleep when Takuza was teaching them on the wonder of his art, a shame since even though Iruka couldn't understand everything it was very interesting and enlightening. That meeting was adjourned and in Iruka's favor, the Chunin instructor had never felt so accomplished since he passed instructor's exam. In his joy, Iruka never noticed his gray-haired friend's narrowing eyes and pure jealousy that twisted the other Chunin's face to an ugly sneer. The next day, Sealing Tower. Today was the awaited and continuously delayed dinner with Itachi's family, and Naruto was pretty nervous about it. He had prepared gifts, and reviewing snippets of his parents' memories which was not a lot as reference. So far he knew Itachi's father was close with his father, so were their wives. Fugaka was fond of Sori in autumn season, and secretly amused of Itachi's fondness for sweet. Mikoto learned how to cook from his mother and thought Kushina was fearless. Not exactly helpful info to give a good first impression, but he would try. He knew how to act as Uzumaki's heir in presence of other clansmen but he was not going to Itachi's house as such but as Itachi's best friend and teammate. Poking his breakfast with his chopstick absent-mindedly, he wondered how one should act in presence of a friend's parent again. He had no clue whatsoever. Naruto-sama. We got a letter, Academy replied us already. Uchiha announced enthusiastically, and Naruto almost choked on his hot morning tea. Already? Didn't they just send the letter just yesterday? Uchiha did send the letter through Courier Ninja and marked it as emergency and overkill and declared anything coming from their young master should be treated as emergency. After finishing his drink, he opened and scanned the letter. Naruto was not sure whether it was a good sign or not that Academy was welcoming them with open arms once again. He belatedly realized answering Academy's request would mean stepping inside the institution he desperately wanted to get out from once again. Damn, maybe I shouldn't speak too fast about going back there. Then again, he was not going back on his word even if he had to face Academy once again. That's it for part 9. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.